Can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me okay? I can hear myself. Okay. I think I'm going to go for over here. So my name's Corey Callaghan. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Florida. Go Gators. And I live and work in Fort Lauderdale, so just up the road. My research is quite broad. I focus, I'm getting crazy feedback. Is that?
Yeah, you are. Maybe move the mic a little.
Is it like too close? How about now? Yeah, but can you, it's good. Okay, cool. Thank you. So my research is quite broad. I focus on participatory science, citizen science, and I'm going to talk, today is going to be a weird mix of kind of like a demo, an intro, mixed in with some research, and I mean, he went to turtles, I'm going to go to anything. So I apologize. I know this is Reef Fest. I tried to sneak in some fish pictures, but really, it's pretty far off the reef, a lot of this. So bear with me. So I'm, like I said, I'm in the Department of Wildlife Ecology and Conservation. I run the Global Ecology Research Group. And I consider myself a desktop ecologist. So I spend most of my time writing code and programming and writing papers behind the computer screen. But in any of my free time, I spend as much time as I can outdoors. Again, I am not near water here. I'm in some pine flatwoods. I am a terrestrial person. My wife is a diver. The main reason I snorkel is because I'm obsessed with this number, my species list on iNaturalist. And it turns out it's hard to see those if you don't go in the water, at least from time to time. And so I do get in the water, but in general, I mixed my kind of personal and free time with iNaturalist and eBird and some of these participatory citizen science apps. I don't have a teaching appointment, so I have a research and extension appointment. So most of what I do is research. And then I have a 30% appointment that is engaging the public and teaching the public how to use these tools to document biodiversity. And this talk is like somewhere in the middle. It's going to be talking a little bit about research and a little bit about how-to. So what is citizen science? I'm kind of going to skip this. Everybody raise your hand if you know what citizen science is. This is okay, cool. That's what I thought. Skip that. What about this? What about data? Right? So citizen science, we know what it is, and Brendan talked a little bit about this, but it generates massive amounts of data. So since 2007, we've seen a 12-fold increase in the global biodiversity data that we have, in large part from citizen scientists, right? This massive increase. Since 2010, 80% of our global knowledge on biodiversity has come from citizen science projects. A lot of those are from these big, broad ones like eBird. eBird, it's like cheating, right? Like birders are obsessive, compulsive people. In May, just this year in May, throughout the entire month, they generated 7 observations per second on average, right? So this is crazy amounts of data. iNaturalist is seeing 120,000 observations a day uploaded. People taking photos and uploading them to the web. And so iNaturalist is really what I'm going to be focusing on. And this is where again, desktop ecologist, I think what a lot of researchers think about is where these biodiversity data are. Even if that trend from the previous graph plateaus, we have massive amounts of data that we don't know exactly what to do with. Brendan's clearly working on some sophisticated modeling to really kind of integrate the reef data that you guys are contributing to really see how are we going to be monitoring biodiversity trends and what are we going to be doing with these data. I am going to talk about citizen science data used in research as well as policy. But first, I'm going to give a brief overview to iNaturalist. So who has heard of iNaturalist? Who has an iNaturalist account? Who uses iNaturalist? Who used it in the last month? Who used it today? Okay, cool. Oh, awesome. Okay. So most of you at least have heard of it and know what it is. So I'm going to go a little bit fast, but I do want to give an overview of what it is. This is going to be a little bit from a scientific perspective and how the data look and what the data actually are. So first, it's a multi-taxa, an independent 501c3 organization. It's a smartphone app and a web-based platform. So how many people have been on the website version? Much less, okay? That is where a lot of the functionality takes place. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and if I have time, go through it a little bit as well with you. It's completely free, and the website's inaturalist.org. Generates 3 key pieces of data. What is it? Where is it? When is it there? Right? What, when, where? So what is it? Species, yeah. I literally swapped this out this morning, so yeah, this was not fish. Yeah. I was like, where can I sneak fish in? Yeah. But total, across the world, there's more than 530,000 species have been documented on iNaturalist across the world. Now back to non-fish. What is it? It's a butterfly. It's a southern skipperling. That too, it's true. And so where is it? It's in my backyard. This is up in Davie Plantation, Florida. You can geo-privacy things. I'm clearly not worried about it. If you're ever in the area, feel free to stop by. But this is important, right? So I know that this individual was taken in my backyard. But you can zoom out. First here, right? So each red box is an observation of the southern skipperling. The reason I picked this is it's a fairly uncommon, but it was one of the best finds I've had in my yard, to be fair. But it's fairly uncommon in South Florida, especially in Broward and Miami-Dade County. But you can zoom out further. And we know pretty quickly, this is a southeast geographic ranging species from Texas to kind of throughout the southeast. When is it there? Very quickly. You can see it's a fall flying species. Right? So very, very quickly, you can get these kind of key pieces of information as a scientist. What, when, where. What is research grade? So within the iNaturalist realm, there's one important term to know, and that is, there's many, but one of the most important terms to know is research grade. Research grade is kind of self-explanatory. It's the data that me as a researcher or my students will go, grab, and download and can use for a scientific paper. It's been vetted by the community, and you have to have a certain number of observations and identifications for that, observation to go to research grade status. And that is so 2/3 agreement on species identifications. And these research grade observations go to something called GBIF. That's the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. I mentioned that earlier. You can consider that the world's largest clearinghouse for anything biodiversity data. Museums, professionals, citizen science projects, any of that. Most of it goes to GBIF to be openly accessible to meet some of our sustainable development goals. Again, a swap. So there's key pieces of information to meet research grade, right? Within iNaturalist, there's something called metadata. Metadata is data about the data. So I took this photo, snorkeling, up at Blue Heron Bridge, and it's not just a photo, right? He was actually talking about the important pieces of information that you need for the sea turtles, right? So you get the who, what, where. And then it has the identification agreement, the location, and the observer and the date of observation, as well as when it was submitted. So all these pieces of information are then stored in the cloud and eventually go to this GBIF kind of data clearinghouse platform. Just real quick, so one thing to keep in mind is organism is wild. A lot of times people will take pictures of fish in aquariums and upload those. I mean, it's an okay way to know what the fish is, but it's not data that I want to try to model. And so this is why people like me, we have to go and clean the data and be well, that doesn't make sense for that marine fish to be in the middle of the country. So you have to think about these types of things when you're treating these data. And this is just a map of GBIF that I keep mentioning and kind of where. So red is more biodiversity data, and yellow is kind of medium, and then the kind of bluish background, there are no data, right? So this is a global map of all the biodiversity knowledge we have in the world. All right, so I'm trying to think of what I want to do here. I think, I'm going to get, I don't want to drive a Mac, but I'm going to try to, no, it's okay, I'll give it a go. I'm not a Mac person, so you can see me fumble here. So I just want to give a quick demo of what the iNaturalist website looks like. One more time, who's been on the website? So some people, okay.
Where's my bottom go? Can you come do the swiping?
And this will require some participation from you all. Really? Man, there's a lot of things. Okay. So this is an iNaturalist website. One of the things, there's many things that I like about it, and if you ask my wife, I spend way too much time on this platform. So you can you have a little, you can view your observations. Right, so these are just some ones that I've seen, but then I can type in, yes, I spend way too much time. My wife was not congratulatory. No. So here, I'll go to fishes, right? So we'll search, we'll come back to the reef. So yeah, he's trying, thank you, whoever. I just go into there and I just point and shoot, and but I try to get these observations. So I've seen 87 species, so that's not bad. And I'm just showing this because this is a way that I keep track of what I've seen, right? So that less about me, and now let's just go to explore. So who's got somebody named a medium rare fish, not super rare, not super common, something here that's medium rare. Black and what?
Black-edged triplefish is what the... It will. Absolutely.
How bad did I spell it? Oh boy, I'm fumbling.
Maybe just do triple fin.
What's the word triple fin? Yeah. Let's put in triple fin.
And just pick one.
Red black, is that the one?
That's not it.
That's not it. Okay. Right, so there's 2,199 observations of this species, but let's see where they are. I've literally never heard of this species before, so. Okay, so that's good though, right? Okay, so there's none here. This is good. Good. All right, let's go to Monroe County in the right state. So in Monroe, there's 221,000 observations. 13,000 people have submitted data. But then you can actually zoom in. Let's say there's a manatee. This is where this is me on a Mac. God, I knew this was going to happen. So each of these points is an observation. So you can redo search. Now, I'll go back to fishes. I should have practiced my taxonomy to see if there's how do I get to marine fishes? It's hard, right? Taxonomically? Yeah. All right, so just in this little area, there's 294 species. Okay, how about this? Who's got a guess for this most reported one? Atlantic tarpon.
It's the most interesting.
Right? So there's all these kinds of biases. They're big. They probably go down to that one dock and just take the photos when they're fed, right? These are probably not, but sergeant majors, not too far down the list. Pork fish. Let's go down towards here. So all of a sudden, bicolored damselfish, 13 observations. That looks cool. Okay. Is that a lot or a little? What? So why is it hard? Exactly. All right, now.
Okay, he'll go back.
I can't do Mac anymore. I'm not going to go to as many spots as I had planned. Okay. So that's a brief demo. Usually it's a little bit longer, but that's okay. We can come back if we want to. So there is a lot to do. There's a lot of functionality. That I think the main point, though, is that there's a lot of functionality that you can get from the website that you cannot get on the app, including identifications, which I'll come back to in a little bit. But for now, I want to talk kind of big picture, blue sky. How are these data being used? I'm really interested. So someone noticed how many observations I have. Thank you. And I spend a lot of time contributing to these platforms. But I'm always curious from an academic perspective, how are these data being used? Am I actually making any kind of difference for the scientific endeavor writ large, right? And so I'm going to look at this in two different ways, one from a research perspective and one from a policy perspective. I'm going to talk about two separate papers that we've recently put out from my research group that kind of focus on these. So first, how are researchers using these data? We did what's called a systematic literature search. So the first thing we did, there's this engine called Google Scholar that kind of indexes all papers ever published. Luckily, and this is just focused on iNaturalist. iNaturalist is like a somewhat niche term, right? You're not going to see that many places. So we typed in iNaturalist. There was 11,000 hits when we first did it. Right, so very common. I'm like, maybe this is why nobody's ever done this before. But I was like, let's just do it anyway. And so we did it. And we filtered that down to about 6,500 articles that we think met our criteria. From there, we read 6,500 articles and got to 2,137 articles that did meet our criteria. And we went through those manually to extract information from those articles. We got the study area, the taxonomy, the article topic, and then how did they use iNaturalist and how much did they use iNaturalist? Did they use a single observation or did they use hundreds of thousands of observations? Some of the things that we pulled out from each of these articles include, the topics could have been species distribution, biology, kind of looking at biodiversity or population, data quality comparison. I'm going to give some case studies of some of these as well. So here's the results. Here's the number of iNaturalist observations growing through time. Massive increase, right? Exponential increase, near exponential increase in numbers of observations through time. And surprisingly, the number of iNaturalist articles is actually tracking. The number of papers using those data are actually tracking that trend in number of observations. So it's fundamentally shifting how scientists are conducting research. Papers have been published using iNaturalist data from 128 countries. Right? So this has seriously global reach. Places where they don't have any kind of money for actual scientific research are actually proportionally using these data more to further their understanding of the species that they have and share the planet with. Unsurprisingly, most of those do come from the United States, right? In general, the United States puts out the most research, and some of these other countries as well. But 128 countries have used iNaturalist data. Taxonomically, 638 taxonomic families have been published using iNaturalist data. So we're seeing these data across the entire tree of life being used in kind of advancing scientific research. Now, there's crustaceans made this. Yes, exactly. I was hoping someone would notice that, right? There's no fishes. Why? It's really tough data to get, right? This is the trickiest data. It's really hard. We're going to come back to that, but I'm glad someone noticed that. But insects, plants, mammals, some of the normal taxonomic groups. Over 50% of articles were focused on 3 or fewer species. Right? So most of the papers that are using these data are focused on a single species or a couple different species. And this is a word cloud of all those 2,000 plus articles that we looked at, and we extracted the titles from each of those, and the size of the word corresponds to how often that word appears in those titles. So distribution, climate change, new, conservation. Right? So distribution was the number one use of these data. And it happens all the time, even in marine systems, right? People upload a photo, and it gets identified, and it's like, oh, that's the first record south of some Gulf Stream thing that I don't know about. Right? But these types of things are constantly happening and advancing our understanding. After species distribution and range expansions, biology and behavior, biodiversity, data quality concern. And then notice this one, so species discovery. It's not a lot. It's only about 50 articles or so, but those are actual new species to science being discovered through iNaturalist. Someone uploads a photo, some taxonomist sits on his computer and is like, that's kind of funky, what is that? Can you go collect that? They collect it, send it to them, they do the analysis, and they say, this is an undescribed species. So about 50 articles in our analysis were of that type as well. A little bit more, kind of more detailed drilling down here a little bit. So the data role, most of the time it's a minor data source. So that means it's complementary to other data sources, like standardized professional monitoring. This is very common, right? So you have these long time series, like we saw a little bit earlier, and then people are starting to implement and kind of take some of the spatial geographic breadth that iNaturalist brings and implement that and kind of integrate those data in very sophisticated ways to kind of inform our understanding and spatially. I already talked about this. So iNaturalist data type. So observation data was the number one. So that's the who, what, where. But something I didn't mention, which someone picked up on earlier, that butterfly that I had was on a flower, right? So that's the imagery. That's an interaction. That's a biological interaction. And so here you can see over time, it used to be people were using iNaturalist data for kind of like the spatial, the when, where, and what. But more and more people are using it. They're taking the images and getting information from those images. And so here, I'll give you an example of an actual paper I published with fish. So we were wondering, can we quantify habitat information from iNaturalist photographs? Right? I said fish. I kind of led you astray. It's actually not about the fish. It's actually the background. It's actually the habitat underwater behind the fish. So more and more people are uploading these images to iNaturalist, but in the background, we actually get some information. We compared that with the Reef Life Survey data set, which is a very standardized data set that many of you maybe know about, who actually do transects to quantify habitat, right? To actually track underwater habitat. This is where I gotta be really careful because whenever I talk about this to a normal audience, I don't worry, but you guys actually know about this stuff, so I could easily fumble this, so just to be clear. We downloaded photos. This was based in Eastern Australia near Sydney. I did my PhD over there, and so I spent a bit of time there. We got photos from 6 of the most popular dive sites from iNaturalist. The first thing we did was how usable are these photos? Because some of them are blurry, some of them have sand only, some of them just you can't actually get anything from it. But turns out over 75% of those photos were, quote, usable to actually get this information. And so then we compared the frequency of occurrence from Reef Life Survey for these 7 underwater habitat types with the iNat occurrence frequency after we classified each photo. It's a very royal we. An undergraduate led this work, and they did a lot of work kind of going through a lot of photos. And sure enough, we find a fairly significant relationship between these two. Right? So this was just a very simple case study to ask the question, can we kind of track the underwater environment through iNaturalist photographs? Now, that was a quick dive, circling back to the big picture, back to this big synthesis that we did. In 2020, so we had over 5,000 publications that use iNaturalist data, and in the last 5 years, there's been a 10-fold increase in the use of these data in scientific publications. And in 2022, 4 articles per day were published using these data. I don't have these numbers, but we did some back-of-the-envelope calculations. We estimate about 9 articles per day in 2025 are being put out using iNaturalist data, because it really is increasing. Unfortunately, by the time we actually did this analysis and published it, crap ton of articles have been published using iNaturalist data. And again, 128 countries and 638 taxonomic families. That was led by data management analysts in our group. If you're interested in reading that paper, it's fully accessible online. Case study 2, back to fish a little bit more. Again, back to Sydney. We had some of the popular dive sites. Now we're actually interested in quantifying whether or not you can get species diversity, so species richness, just the total number of species in the site. How does that compare when you use iNaturalist versus Reef Life Survey, right? The standardized kind of transect approach where these people are, in theory, quite trained, they know what they're talking about, compared to iNaturalist, where you get people like me that just point and shoot and put photos on the internet, right? Is anything actually comparable there? And so sure enough, here we have trends through time. iNaturalist is in blue, and Reef Life Survey is in orange. And this is one of the most popular dive sites in Sydney, called Shelley Beach. And you can see the Reef Life Survey data is actually pretty standard, and this is species richness, so the number of identified fish species on that axis. And most of the Reef Life Survey data sets, once they kind of take off and they're getting to some level, they're pretty flat. And that's because they're using the same standardized methods. So they're actually able to track community ecology or species richness through time. But what you might also notice is iNaturalist is absolutely skyrocketing. Why is that? You're not bounded, right? You can go anywhere you want. You see something, you can follow it for 30 minutes to get a photo. Now, that's a blessing and a curse, right? It's great because you can document those rare extraliminal species that might not commonly be there, but it makes it really hard to analyze from a statistical perspective. So it's like this kind of like catch-22, but that is why when you include iNaturalist data, you see this massive increase in species richness. I think really this speaks to the complementarity of using platforms like iNaturalist in combination with some of the surveys and stuff that you guys do that actually have people that know what they're talking about, right? And then we just looked at kind of like over and under expectation for certain species. And we found that actually large-bodied fish were more common in iNaturalist. And that's in large part because the Reef Life Survey have to follow this like transect, right? So I think it's, again, this like unboundedness that you get from iNaturalist, this free search area. So those are just two papers that were published that I had to throw in when I learned this was Reef Fest, so yeah. Okay. So the next kind of big picture meta kind of question I want to talk about, so that was research, right? So 4 papers a day are using iNaturalist data in 2022. But what about policy? Right? How are they actually impacting conservation on the ground? Does anybody know what NEPA is? No? Yeah? Wow, that's good. You guys are sharp. I knew you were sharp. Right, so it's one of, well, I don't know if this is recorded, used to be one of the most important things out of the executive office of the White House. It's currently in flux. But let's just go with, it's really a critically important piece of legislation. And what it does is it mandates anything on federal land, anything that happens, it could be widening a road, putting a new culvert in, has to go through an environmental review process, right? And those generate what's called environmental impact statements. The purpose of those are you get experts, usually a consulting firm, they generate this environmental impact statement that is then sent to the person that is actually going to do the work, and it's reviewed, and we then understand whether or not it has the potential to have an impact on the environment. Usually that focuses on threatened and endangered species, right? Rare species. And so any piece of federal property that has kind of like anything of infrastructure planned, again, anything from widening the road to full-on mining, has to go through this process. Now, I've like kind of heard whispers that these data are being used here, right? Like, why wouldn't you use the data that are available? If these eBird and iNaturalist data are out there, and you're a consulting firm or an engineer, why would you not try to kind of help your case by use data that are out there? And so that's what kind of kicked this project off. We searched every single NEPA document from 2012 to 2022 that contained citizen science, community science, eBird, or iNaturalist. So we searched over 1,300 articles or documents, and 228 were used in the analysis. They were across the entire United States, right? So everywhere this is taking place. And these were across 45 different agencies, including, I thought NOAA was on here, is it not? Ah, yes, including NOAA, okay. Right, so all these agencies are actually using citizen science to some extent, or mentioning it in these environmental impact statements. So then we went one further. We actually classified the use or mention of citizen science in each of these 228 documents. We defined it 4 ways. Either it was suggested, nondescript, direct, or indirect. I'm going to walk through each of those. So nondescript, we couldn't tell, right? Maybe mentioned naturalist, an iNaturalist walk. We don't actually know what they're saying. Doesn't matter. Suggested, a lot of these happened where like an agency's like, we should use the iNaturalist data to monitor in the future. Relatively generic. Direct is what we're interested in. This is actually providing information that has a direct implication for the mitigation or not, lack thereof mitigation, that has to do with that environmental impact statement. So in eBird, there are 687 records of olive-sided flycatcher in this national forest. Right, so that's a direct statement that they're using eBird for. And then indirect is like something generic, like red knot or along the coast, cite eBird, right? So like, again, doesn't really matter. Really, we're interested in direct. And sure enough, from 2012 to 2022, by 2022, about over 40%, just over 40% of environmental impact statements are at least referencing or using citizen science data. Most of those are directly using them. 64% of these environmental impact statements are using citizen science. Now, 87% are eBird, 6% are iNaturalist. I think that's for two reasons. One, iNaturalist is like the new kid on the block. eBird's been around a while, so it doesn't have as much street cred. So I think this is going to grow. Two, there's a significant bias in our threatened and endangered species towards vertebrate species. And so so vertebrates, birds, it's going to be easier, I think. iNaturalist, a lot of insects, most people don't care as much. Now, I want to pull this from direct quote from an environmental impact statement. So I went back to fishes here, just not marine, but like, hey, gotta give me some credit. So no records of Arkansas river shiner have been submitted to iNaturalist from within or close to the landscape analysis area. So this is saying, this is a direct implication of this T&E, threatened and endangered species, has not been observed in the area that we propose exchange. So when you go to iNaturalist and look up Arkansas river shiner, there's one observation. Ever. Right? So this is a significant problem. And turns out 12% of all these environmental impact statements used a sighting of no species as evidence of absence of that species. Right? So these people, this sounded weird. These review statements are kind of not statistically treating this appropriately, is what it boils down to. So this paper was kind of the first one to look at how these data are being used. Now, granted, we kind of had to do it at the federal level, and that's in large part because it's really difficult to get environmental impact statements from anything below that. Even the state level, county level, municipality level, it's just, they exist, but I did not want to spend the time to track them all down. And so I think this is just a brief overview. I think these data are actually being used a lot more in more local municipality, kind of city, county level planning. But I think there's an interesting story here of how INAT and participatory science is shaping the future of biodiversity research, which I talked about, but also our implementation of policy. And even me, so I spend a lot of time outdoors bioblitzing. I get conflicted. If you call me up and you're like, oh man, they're building a golf course, or they're building a golf course, and they're tearing down that natural preserve. I'm like, text me the coordinates. I'll be there. I got my black lights. Let's go see what we can get, right? But then I think about it a little bit more. I'm like, okay, but then some consulting firm could actually just download all the data from iNaturalist and make a bare penny doing that. I'm like, I get in this weird space of I'm just not really sure how I feel about it. I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to take place on how these data are implemented and used in policy going forward. So this paper was published also recently this year, or earlier this year, just kind of highlighting it as a potential tool in environmental review. This is a summary. So again, policy and research. Overall, I really think participatory science, anything from eBird, INET, all the way down to small-scale studies, everything that's taking place is transforming biodiversity research, and we need to think about how it's going to be used in the future. And then I did put some of these slides in. Where am I at on time?
You're okay.
I'm okay? Okay, let me see. When I remember. I guess this was, I'm trying to remember what this was for. I think it's mostly for hopefully some encouragement, right? So a lot of you guys are already doing this, and you guys are already out there. You're already doing reef surveys, but the difference with the iNaturalist is you need a photo, right? So that's the significant, someone said there's not when fish was not on that bar chart, that's because you need a photo. That's a lot of work, right? Especially when you got to take the photo underwater, put it on your laptop, remember where you were, upload it. It's a lot of work. But there's also many other ways to contribute photos. I guess this was just yeah, kind of just getting started with iNaturalist. I'm going to skip through some of this. This is all. Here I did put some fish back in though, so I'll go slow here. Right, but like you can actually, and now that, all that being said, I said how difficult it is, but now a lot of photos, you have like the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, fancy stuff that I don't fully get all the time, but it goes to your cell phone, and then you can upload those photos, right? You can really easily kind of take those photos from the cell phone and upload those to iNaturalist. You select it, the computer vision does its job, tells you it's a queen angelfish, select it, goes to the cloud. Somebody who sits on their computer, who I bet there's people in this room that do this, identifies it correctly, and then it goes to research grade status. Now, there are a few kind of tips that I don't always follow myself, but I think are worth mentioning. So when you have multiple species in a photo, you can either circle the one that you're interested in, or crop it, whatever's easiest. Like you need to tell the identifier and or the computer vision which species you're actually interested in identifying. Try to get if you're on the beach, shells are actually like a really valuable source of data as well. Try to get multiple angles. A ruler is useful. I've already gone through some of this, but I failed. So this is another thing I want to come back to, was identifying. A lot of people say, well, iNaturalist, how can we trust the AI? Because it's driven by an AI computer vision model. The thing is every single observation has to be looked at by a human. Right? So humans are like the central component in the iNaturalist ecosphere. And so it's really important to kind of keep that in mind. And again, I'm preaching to the people that have the expertise to actually identify the triple-colored damselfish or whatever we looked at earlier, right? But like you guys are the, sorry, Christy might like uninvite me from the rest of the weekend, but and so like you guys are the experts, and so it requires some of that human time. I don't know what. Oh, biases with a typo in citizen science. Right, so even within citizen science, even within iNaturalist, here's the proportional difference between great barracuda and then these 4 species. Right, because it's this like large species that people like me, when I go snorkeling, I actually get this one. I don't think I've seen any of these 4. Right, and so there's a lot of people like that. We need people that are more skilled, that can actually take photos of these tricky ones and upload them. Someone is sharp, man. You're sharp. And again, I think just coming back to this plea for like iNaturalist identifications, we wrote a whole paper on kind of like why it's beneficial to ID things. Because it's built on the vision model, the more human trusted identifications that enter that model, the more, the stronger that model gets. And I kind of see it as this like positive feedback loop. More experts join, more observations are identified, people learn, citizen scientists learn, so the next time they upload it correctly maybe, citizen scientists make better identifications, more research grade data, more data that we can fit and then send to smart people like Brendan to use in future models. And again, this is all in this like big scheme of things of we have a lot of data right now, but I think iNaturalist is going to keep taking off. It's going to keep growing exponentially. So I like to spend time thinking about how these data are going to be used in the future. And I have those twice. And so I just did want to put a few other ones in here that people are probably familiar with. You guys obviously are familiar with reef. The Sea Grant Florida, so that's out of the University of Florida as well. So we are highly associated with them. And so there's many different platforms to look at. Oh, my other one didn't end up in there, but that's okay. Reef Life Survey, reef, obviously. And questions? Okay. Sorry for the hecticness.
All right, thank you very much, Corey. Does anybody have any questions for Corey?
So I told you we were going to weave in and out of research, demo, how to, yeah.
All right, this one might seem silly, but I have 2 apps because you guys changed. So it was iNaturalist, and I have an iNaturalist Classic. But The
Yep.
old one was easier for me to use for a long time. Should I be like getting rid of that? Does it matter? I think they both have the same observations in them. Is there
So you're talking
a
about iNet Next?
no iNaturalist
So
iNaturalist
iNet,
classes?
Yeah, so it was iNet Next for a while. Yeah, so I have an Android, so I don't even have this one yet. So they're like ahead. I assume you have an Apple iPhone or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're like ahead for Apple devices. They're both the same. They're just trying to make them better. And so it's just a matter of like lots and lots of bugs and iterative improvement.
Use the one that works.
Yeah, but use the, yes, exactly. It's a good question, but yeah, use the one that works.
So, as an Android user also, what about Seek? Seek by iNaturalist, that's the same, right?
Yes and no. So Seek is built by iNaturalist. It has the same training data, but it's like the best way to think about it is like a slimmed down version of the computer vision model that you get with iNaturalist. One of the main reasons Seek was kind of developed was actually for like privacy issues. So it's actually like geared towards like kids because it is easy to use. And it is easier to use, and like you can do it. The problem with Seek is a lot of people think that if you use Seek, that the data then gets submitted. And they can, but you have to make sure that they do. So I'm not trying to.
I can tell you if the ED of iNaturalist was in this room, he would say, do not use Seek.
Yeah.
Use iNaturalist. Seek is meant for student groups in schools and kids and young kids who did privacy and not having geolocation on where they were taking it.
That's why it was developed.
Yeah, so iNaturalist is what you would want to use. It all goes, that workflow that Corey talked about, that's only happening in iNaturalist.
But it can, yeah, yes, that's the easiest way.
I'm probably loud enough.
No?
Okay, sorry. I had a question. Do you ever use something like, have you ever heard of the You Only Look Once series of object identification software that's freeware?
You're the federal law enforcement guy, right? With the fancy AI models? Yeah, no, man. I don't even know. Like, I don't even know if I should be in the room right now.
No. Oh, God. Let me keep it simple. First of all, I'm retired.
Okay. Okay.
Second of all, we was also DOD and intelligence community.
Okay.
But no.
But no, I have not heard of this.
No.
Look once.
You only look once. It's the reason I'm asking. And I'll try and be brief. In your pipeline for identification and all that, more and more groups are creating specialized and generalized object identification. So that might speed up your intake. I may look into it myself for video because it would allow, in theory, somebody to take a series of images or frames, if it's video or not, and you would get identification labels, the whole nine yards. You could actually process that and then turn that into numerical data or whatever you're looking at.
Okay.
I just thought you.
No, I'll check Wikipedia tonight. Yes. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Oh, that's okay, that's fine. Anyone else for a question? Oh, yeah, Jen.
Free talk. For the habitat stuff, were you guys manually
Yeah.
assigning?
Yeah, again, that was like a legendary load by an undergraduate student. But someone asked like this AI question earlier, and I mean, that was like probably 4 or 5 years ago now. So I think that could fundamentally change or is changing by the right smart people that actually know what to do. This guy here, yeah. Yeah.